the 23rd day of Tevet, corresponding to the 3rd of January. Today's class, graciously sponsored by Shlomo Nahmias and family for the Refuah Shlema of Shlomo ben Abraham ve'Esther and Sipora bat Marinel. Additionally, today's class, sponsored by David and Solomon Zrien, Le'ilu Nishmat, Sara Menuha bat Malka Alea Shalom, and obviously we continue praying for the well-being of our brothers and sisters in Eretz Israel, the safe return of the hostages, and the protection and success of our soldiers, and peace in Eretz Israel, which obviously boils down to peace in the world. So today we are going to take a slight detour from the past 3 or 4 days topic, which was the topic of the Shovavim. We go into the Zohar Kadosh of yesterday, that the Torah discusses the arrival of Moshe Rabbeinu. As we mentioned this very briefly yesterday, Moshe Rabbeinu, the son of Yochebed and Amram, born literally at the end of the second trimester of his mother Yochebed being pregnant. They were able, to save Moshe Rabbeinu for 3 months, and eventually Moshe Rabbeinu gets saved by Batya, the daughter of Paro, the king of Misraim. The Zohar Kadosh begins and it says, "Vayelech ish mibet Levi, vayikach et bat Levi." A man of the tribe of Levi took the daughter of Levi. As we know, Levi was the longest living son of Yaakov Avinu. He was the father of Yochebed. Yochebed was the one that was born as they were crossing the border from Egypt, or rather from Eretz Israel into Egypt, and she was, the way the Parashah writes, the Neshama number 70 that caused the families of Am Israel to become a nation in Eretz Israel. The Pasuk says, Kol nefesh haba'a Misraima shiv'im. There were 70 neshamot. There were 70 people that came down to Egypt. Number 70 was Yochebed, the daughter of Levi, that she marries Amram, and she becomes the mother of Miriam, Aharon, and Moshe. Miriam was the oldest, Aharon 3 years younger, and Moshe Rabbeinu 3 years younger than Aharon a Kohen. The Pasuk writes, Vayelech ish mibet Levi, and a man from the house of Levi went to Mary. Now, we must understand, when we talk about Moshe Rabbeinu, a few interesting details about Moshe Rabbeinu. One of them was that Moshe Rabbeinu was born Mahul. Moshe Rabbeinu was born circumcised. There was no need to do the milah to Moshe Rabbeinu. Obviously, the halacha is that when a child is born with the berit milah, you need to do something called hatafat dam berit. You need to bring some blood from the berit milah. Take a needle, whatever the mohel will do it. It's obviously a symbolic act, because there is a concept in the blood of the berit milah known as dam haberit. Also, Moshe Rabbeinu, interesting enough, as we mentioned this in the past, his real name was never Moshe. Moshe was the name actually given to him by Batya. Moshe Rabbeinu, according to the Midrashim, had 10 different names. Some of the names that I remember, I have the list in the office. One name was Avigdor, another one was Tubia, another one was Netanel, another one was Haber, another one was Natan. Those are 5 names out of 10. They were Abi Zenoah, That was another name. But why don't we call Moshe by any of those names? Short answer, the Torah is teaching us a very powerful lesson in gratitude. Imagine yourself for a moment. You are the daughter of Paro. Your father makes a decree of basically get rid of the Jewish boys. And what do? You go against your father, you go and you save a Jewish child that eventually becomes the Redemptor or the Mashiach for the Jewish people. And the Torah says, Batikra et Shemo Moshe, she called him Moshe, shene'emar, ki min hamayim meshitihu. I drew Moshe out of the water. So the Torah says, if a young lady is capable of going against her father, and how do we learn that she went against her father? If you look inside of the parasha, I'm going to read you just one short pasuk that described how did she save Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, what did she do to save Moshe Rabbeinu? Let's see if I find the pasuk fast. I should be able to find it because it's in the beginning of this week's parasha. Right here, I found it. The pasuk says, and Batya, the daughter of Paro, went down to the Nile River. Okay, she went and she sees that there is a basket, so to speak, into the water. So comes Rashi, and it says, Batishlach et amataha batikahya, and she sent her amma. Now, amma in Hebrew has two meanings. Amma means this part of the body. From the elbow to the wrist, it's called amma. This part, it's called tefah. This is called amma. So what did she do? She made the effort of extending her arm, literally, to grab the basket. Now, imagine yourself, the door is locked, okay? Somebody's behind the door, and the person wants to come in. And what do I do sitting from here? I push the door to open. Will the door ever open if I'm sitting here? No. And the door does not have a remote control for this. It doesn't have. This is a calculator, okay? Just for the record. But today you can press all buttons, okay? Doesn't open. But the miracle was that her hand extended to the distance where the basket was inside of the water. Other opinions explains Amatah means her female servant. Mehila. Permiso, respectfully, do me a favor, take care of the noise level. Thank you. Thank you. Now, what happens? She extends her arms and she grabs the baby. You know what lesson is the Torah teaching us? I believe that this was attributed to Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky or one of the other Gedolim, and it says, this pasuk teaches us that in life, the person must make the effort and let God crown with success your effort. Even though you'll say, it's impossible. It's impossible because we are humans. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nothing is impossible. We need to make our ishtadlut. And comes Rashi, and he brings the Gemara in Sota, and it says, Lashon Yad, means that she extended her arm, and it says, Shenitrabeba amatah amot arbe. Her hand became extended. How many times did the hand extended? The Rashi doesn't tell me that answer, but it tells me that extended long enough, elasticized, like Flash Gordon. What was the DC Comics guy? I was born with Flash Gordon. Come on. I'm not sure if he's still alive. Okay. No, he was the runner, right? But there was another guy that was able to extend. Okay, right. What was, you forgot. Okay, if you remember, let me know. Okay, doesn't matter. I see that we all were children one time. Okay. Anyways, so can you imagine that faculty of the hand? Now, let's go further. Just one moment. Okay? Many times, Amata, we explained that. Okay? Batikrat Shemo Moshe, we mentioned already. Who are you? Meshitihu. Excellent. So it says that Hakadosh Baruch Hu, there's a third opinion that says, you know why she went to the water? According to some opinions, to convert to Judaism. She went to the mikveh. That's why she was called Batya. Batya. What kind of name is Batya? The daughter of God, so to speak. She, according to the Talmud, she was one of the individuals of the world that went into Gan Eden alive. And he went out of Egypt with the Jewish people. Can you imagine the daughter of Pharaoh becomes a Jew? Let me put it in plain English. The son of Hitler becomes a Jew. It happened. It happened. The grandchildren of Haman became Yehudim. Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes was a descendant of the Roman emperor by the name of Nero. Whenever the enemies of the Jewish people go against God, God says, okay, let's play a game. Let's continue further. And it says, one more. I heard this yesterday. Amen. And I'm not sure if I have permission to say the source. But it was attributed to a shiur given to by Rabbi Gladstein, which he was here a few weeks ago visiting us, in which he explains a couple of things. He explains that Batya actually was the tikkun of the neshama of Hava. Remember Hava, the wife of Adam Arishon? What happened? She sinned. How did she sin? By eating from the tree, correct? But how did she eat from the tree? She extended her arm and took a fruit from the tree. Batya makes the tikkun by extending her arm and saving Moshe Rabbeinu, which according to the holy books, part of the tikkun of Moshe Rabbeinu was the tikkun of Adam Harishon. It's too deep. I'm not going to tell you everything that I heard, but I'm going to tell you what I can tell you. Adam Harishon, when him and Hava made the unfortunate sin in the beginning of Sefer Bereshit, it wasn't that they just committed a sin. The consequence of the sin had an effect on the entire world. So therefore, the tikkun that it needs to be made, it needs to be made in a way that benefits the entire world. And if it cannot benefit the entire world, for sure can benefit Bnei Israel. Hence Moshe Rabbeinu gives the Torah to Am Israel. Because the tree of life brought death. But what the Torah brings? Life. So the antidote of the tree of life, sin, is learning Torah. We say this every day. Ki hem hayenu ve'orech yamenu. But I'm going to reveal to you one more secret. That Moshe Rabbeinu also came down to the world to make one more remedy, one more tikkun. And I don't expect that we all going to understand how the topic of the neshamot work, but we need to know the following. Remember the incident in the beginning of Sefer Bereshit between Cain and Hevel? They were arguing. Now, there are many opinions explaining what they were arguing about. It began with Cain being jealous of Hevel. Hence the name Cain are the same letters of kin'ah, jealousy. Okay? Kof nun aleph he kin'ah. What was the jealousy of Cain towards Hevel? Short answer. Hevel, if you look in the beginning of Sefer Bereshit, Rashi brings it down, and others, I believe, that Hevel was born with two sisters, and Cain was born with one. So Cain says, I'm the firstborn. If I'm the firstborn, I'm entitled to get double portion. That means two girls. Hevel says, no. Why are you entitled to get double girls, two girls? I know it sounds funny, but that was the argument. Very simple, Hevel says. If you would have been receiving two, you would have been born with two. The fact that you received only one, that means that I have two and you have one. There were additional spiritual disagreements between Cain and Hevel, between life and the afterlife, actions and consequences, resurrection, etc. Bottom line, from a philosophical argument, it became a wrestling match. Although Hevel had the upper hand, Cain cried out and Hevel released him. But Cain came back and stabbed Hevel many, many times. And the reason why he did that was because he didn't know from what part of the body the neshama, the soul, lives. So he needed to cover his bases. And then we know the famous question. When Hashem comes to Cain and asks him, Aye Hevel achicha, where is Hevel your brother? So what answer Cain gives to Hashomer achi anochi? I'm my brother's keeper. You know what the Mefarshim writes that Cain is telling God? He says, God, why are you blaming me for the killing of Hevel? I only stabbed him. You are the one that gives life. You are the one that takes life. So if he died, it was because of you. I only stabbed him a few times. Don't ask me how many. There is a number. So what do you think happens now to the soul of Cain and Hevel? Hevel, according to the holy books, was never married. Never married, automatically no children. That's one strike. Then we have Cain. Cain kills Hevel. That's another strike. So Cain and Hevel now, they need their tikkun. So who is the tikkun of Cain and Hevel according to the holy books? Moshe Rabbeinu and Yitro. Moshe, the he of Moshe, stands for Hevel. Moshe comes down to the world. Now, Cain needs a repair. How do we get the repair? By Yitro. Yitro, one of the names of Yitro was Kenny. Not Kenny, that's Kenny. Kenny. That was one of the names of Yitro. Why? Cain. Yitro in the beginning was a Gentile, was a goy, who tried every belief and every religion that existed. That's why if you look in Sefer Shemot, in the middle of the book, Perashat Yitro, what Yitro says, Ata yadati. Now I know that your God, the God of the Jewish people, is the real deal. Yitro is the first person in the world who says, Baruch Hashem. Sure, look in the Perashah. Blessed be God who saved the Jewish people from Egypt and Paro. So what happens with Yitro? Moshe Rabbeinu, in this week's Perashah, becomes a fugitive. After the incident that he kills the Egyptian, right? And then he sees the two Jewish men arguing. Eventually, Paro tries to kill Moshe Rabbeinu in this week's Perashah. Moshe Rabbeinu escapes Egypt. Where are you going to go? He goes to Yitro. So I'm giving you a short story. What happens eventually? Yitro gives his daughter Tzipporah to Moshe Rabbeinu as a wife. According to Rabbeinu Ha'ari, Tzipporah was the tikkun of the extra sister born with Hevel. And Yitro was Cain. Now Yitro, aka Cain, tells Moshe, Hevel, you are right. You were deserving of the extra sister. So therefore, I'm giving you my daughter as a wife. So we need to understand. And I'm only speaking very superficially today because I want to cover more ground, that the fact that Cain killed Hevel, that's already a major crime. But because the world then had only 4 people, Adam, Hava, Cain, and Hevel, plus the girls. But Hevel never got married. He never had children. That means that when Cain kills him, in a sense, he's killing 50% of the world's population. So the tikkun of Cain is not enough first round in this week's Perashah that Cain or Yitro comes to Moshe and it says, take my daughter. This is only the first step of the tikkun that Yitro, aka Cain, needs to make. And in Perashat Yitro, we'll see one more tikkun that Cain does. Because so far, the only tikkun that we discussed today is about marrying Tzipporah to Moshe Rabbeinu. This is round 1. How many rounds you have in boxing? 15. You have 3 knockout rule, but 15 rounds usually, correct? Correct? You don't know this halakha? Of course I know. What do you think? I'm an angel? I'm a human. Like you. No. In my days, it was 15 rounds. Maybe in junior leagues they have 12 rounds. But, these are basic halachot of the game of the sport of boxing. Which we understand now that the tikkun of Cain throughout the Jewish history will spread out for many generations. This week's Perashah is only one of the many tikkunim coming up later on in history. I'm not sure that he has 15, but he had close to half a dozen for sure. But again, We're talking slowly. Now, we're not going to fly too much because there is a lot of information that's going to be flowing. And we're going to continue, Be'ezat Hashem, talking about Moshe and Yitro as the parasha goes by. Now comes the Zohar Kadosh, and it says, going back to the marriage between Amram and Yochebed, that we must say, the Zohar Kadosh writes, that this marriage took place before the giving of the Torah. Why? Because Yochebed was the aunt of Amram. And according to Torah law, an aunt cannot marry a nephew. An uncle can marry a niece, but an aunt cannot marry a nephew. But because this took place before Matan Torah, so halachically was not a problem. It's like Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu married two sisters. Okay? And according to the Mefarshim that I saw this past Shabbat, one of the reasons that I saw written that Rachel was not buried in Me'arat HaMachpelah was not to embarrass Yaakov Avinu and herself, because there were two sisters married one husband. Before the Torah was allowed, outside of Eretz Israel was allowed. Once they came into Eretz Israel, was no longer allowed. Hence, Rachel passes away prematurely. Now, although we can remove that halachic question, because I can tell you, since Rachel and Leah, like Sara and Rivka, they were converts. So once they become converts, Gerim, there is no longer the blood level relationship. Sure, when a person converts, part of the halachic requirement is they sever the ties from the previous relationships. That includes parents and siblings. That's the proper way. That many people don't do it, that's a whole different show. But Rachel and Leah, once they converted, there was no halachic problem for them to marry Yaakov. But because they were sisters, and because it was before the giving of the Torah, and the Torah tells us openly they were called sisters even after they married Yaakov, so automatically Rachel felt embarrassed to be buried in Me'arat HaMachpelah next to Abraham and Ishaq, and next to Sara, and next to Rivka. I saw this Hidush this past Shabbat. I have it in the office because it's Sefer Bereshit, so now I'm in Shemot mode. But comes the Zohar Kadosh and explains the background in this marital relationship between Yochebed and Amram. First of all, this was their second marriage. Not the first, their second marriage. Yochebed, when she becomes the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu, says the Zohar Kadosh, she was 130 years old. But should not surprise us, even though we speak about Sarai Menu becoming a mother at the age of 90, but we must understand the difference between the time of Sarah and the time in Egypt. The time in Egypt was a time that there were many miracles that would happen, especially in the topic of pregnancy and giving birth. As we mentioned yesterday, 6 babies were born at the time. Your wife became pregnant, you needed to have 6 cribs, 6 milah, or 6 events. Obviously, you can do 1 for 6. But al is, when you do twins, you cannot do them together. You do one first, you wait a bit, on the same day, you do the next one. Later on the day, you do the third one. Later on in the day, you do the fourth one. To give each one, don't ask me how many sebets you have to do, how many seudot you have to do. Yeah, you have to do one at the end of the day. Yeah, and you come back at 3 o'clock. Okay, you can't do unless you want to do one after each milah. Okay, but as far as concerned doing the milah, you don't do them together. You do them separately to give the berachot and the kiddush and the honor to each baby. Otherwise, if you do them together, the first one is exciting. Number 4, okay, get moving, get it over with. You understand? That's part of the reason. So what happens? Another lesson that we learn from this week's parasha. You know, we always talk about Moshe Rabbeinu being humble. Known fact. Who was the teacher of Moshe Rabbeinu in humility? Short answer, his father, Amram. Amram and Yochebed were married. They had 2 children, Miriam and Aharon. Amram listens to the decree of Paro. What happens? He divorces Yochebed. He says, Paro made a decree, we can't be together any longer. What happened the day that Amram got divorced? All of the Leviim of the Jewish people got divorced because he was the head of the Sanhedrin. He was the chief rabbi of Israel. So all the rabbis got divorced that day. That's what's written in the holy books. The next day, Miriam was a child, right? Rebukes her father. Literally. What does she say to him? Your decree are worse than Paro. Can you imagine your 5-year-old daughter? It tells you you're worse than Hitler. That's what she told him. And I'm sorry to say the name of Hitler, but I think we can relate more to him than to Paro. They both were bad. According to many opinions, Hitler. Sure. Different topic. Now, Zonevela, Zoterefa. They were both wrong. But what caused more casualties to the Jewish people? Of course. But it's a different topic. And if you don't agree with what I just said, we agree to disagree. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant today. So imagine your 5-year-old child is telling you you're worse than Paro. And Rashi explains, what did she say? She said to her father, Paro made a decree against the boys only. But if you are divorced, no boys and no girls. Now, what could have been any of us reaction to a 5-year-old child statement? Go play Legos. Go play with your dolls. Don't talk to me like this. But Amram wasn't any one of us. Amram was the head of the Jewish people. And he listened to his daughter's musar, so to speak, and he agreed that he acted in a precipitated manner, and he remarried Yochebed. From marriage number 2, Moshe Rabbeinu was born. That's the background of what the Zohar Kadosh is telling us. And it says that we must understand that a miracle of this magnitude, that a lady of the age of 130 years old becomes pregnant and gives birth to a healthy child, it caused and it happened for one reason, the Zohar says. God blessed their relationship, physical relationship, and alter nature for the sake of Moshe Rabbeinu. Because Moshe Rabbeinu, besides all the names that we mentioned, he was also called Moshiach Shel Israel, the savior of the Jewish people. Continues the Zohar Kadosh, and it says that Kadosh Baruch Hu had, we can say in today's technological generation, had a tracker on Moshe Rabbeinu and escort Moshe even into the water. In other words, God didn't allow that Moshe Rabbeinu will not be under godly supervision and protection, because Moshe Rabbeinu was God's investment to the Jewish world. Not only to save the Jewish people, but to give us the Torah, which till today we call the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Torah Sivalanu Moshe, Zichru Torat Moshe Avdi. These Pesukim, what they are saying, the Torah is Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Zohar Kadosh explains that this is something that is not limited only to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu perhaps was the first official type, okay? But before Moshe Rabbeinu, Abraham, Ishaq, Yaakov, the Shebatim, the tribes, and throughout history, the Zohar says, the Tzaddikim that made a difference in the life of the Jewish people, in the history of the Jewish people. How many Tzaddikim we have had throughout history? Thousands. I'm not even talking about the Nevi'im, the prophets. I'm talking about Tzaddikim. It says, what prompted these Tzaddikim to have this, so to speak, special spot in Jewish history? The Zohar Kadosh says, the Bekut. They glued to Kadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, they found the formula to be constant connected with Kadosh Baruch Hu. Isn't there a platform called Constant Contact? Have you heard of this? Okay, when we send emails, they come through Constant Contact. What's the meaning of constant contact? That I'm constantly in touch with you. That's the Bekut. The Bekut means glue. The Bekut means bonding. The Zohar Kadosh says that when a person wants to bond with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bond with the person. And once Hashem bonds himself to us, we must make the first effort. And we said in Shira Shirim, Ani ledodi vedodi li. God says, you want to be next to me? No problem. Take the first step. Remember, I mentioned in the beginning of the class the effort that Batya made, and we explained who in the right mind will make this effort and believing that now you're going to be able to open the door. There are 20 feet, 15 feet. It says, God says, don't worry about physicality. You make your effort and I'll do the rest. This was part of what the Zohar Kadosh says. And the Zohar Kadosh goes further and it says that Moshe Rabbeinu was talking, right? But the Gemara writes that the Shekhinah, the holy presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, was talking from the vocal cords of Moshe Rabbeinu. Shekhinah medaberet mitoch gerono shel Moshe Rabbeinu. God was talking. And there is a separate explanation what exactly this means. God was talking through the mouth of Moshe Rabbeinu. But for the limited explanation that we are giving, Moshe Rabbeinu was a servant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a good way. not in a servant way, but it means Moshe Rabbeinu, God calls Moshe Rabbeinu, Lo chen abdi Moshe. What's the meaning of a servant? A servant reaches the level of nullifying their will in order to fulfill the will of their master. That's who we are. We are called Eved Hashem. We are called servants of God. Now, why are we called this name? Servants of God. Short answer is that we put away our will in order to do the will of Hashem. This could have happened to any of us today in the morning. We came to pray, but maybe some of us wanted to stay in bed longer, correct? But what did we say? No, I need to come to pray to the synagogue. I need to pray with the minyan. So I'm going to sacrifice my wanting to sleep, correct? In order to fulfill the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That puts us the same title of Moshe Rabbeinu. Eved Hashem. Obviously, Moshe Rabbeinu was only one. But we need to understand, in our limited understanding level, when we make a sacrifice for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we are mimicking Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Zohar HaKadosh concludes and it says, the Bekut, bonding with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is what makes the difference in our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because there are many people who feel that they are connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The question is, what level of connection do you have? What Wi-Fi connection do you have? Do you have the guest Wi-Fi or you have the main office Wi-Fi? Can you understand the difference? Hazaku Baruch. Okay, on a personal note, tomorrow I will not be here. I gotta be up north just for the day. Now, Be'ezat Hashem, Rabbi Moshe Ajmi will be giving the class on my behalf. God willing, I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. Short, in and out. All right? Beautiful. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen be'amen. Rabbi Hananiah ben Akashia Omer, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות